Well, it's been 6 months to the day since Hurricane Sandy rocked the East Coast. It was the storm's wake that actually killed 147 people and also displaced 161,000 families from their homes from states from New York all the way down to New Jersey. They suffered billions upon billions of dollars of damages. There have been some notable improvements in relief efforts, but for the families affected by this megastorm, recovery has been slow and stubborn. 39,000 people are still displaced in New Jersey, and some parts of the disaster area have been left untouched. And now, even more bad news. Mold is infesting the houses that fell victim to the storm, and even FEMA's new flood mapping system is causing problems for the residents. For a look at the recovery efforts from the ground, Amaya Gelman is the policy coordinator at Alliance for a Just Rebuilding, and she joins me now. Hi there, Amaya. Can you explain a little bit more about the ways that that the relief efforts are being put into this Hurricane Sandy area, and how is it being just or or unjust?
Well, the relief money from the federal government hasn't come down yet. The city and state have had to apply through what's called action plans for much of the federal money that's going to come specifically for housing repair and rebuilding. The work that's gone on so far has been put together primarily by the city. The city created what's called a rapid repair program, which went in and did repairs to people's homes to restore electrical service and heating, but it did not address mold, and it hasn't fixed the mold problem, and as a result, there are a lot of people who are living in housing that has been deemed safe because it has electricals and heat restored, but in fact, people are getting sick from mold. There was a small private program that was created with the assistance of the mayor's office that had 2,000 slots for people to get mold repair. The problem is that there are about 80,000 units of housing that were in the flood zones, and many of those report mold. In fact, community groups have recently started doing surveys to figure out who has mold, because the city really hasn't done that. And they're finding that people with lower incomes who haven't been able to hire contractors to do mold remediation, or who have tried to do it themselves, haven't been successful in getting the mold out. Mold is actually very difficult to remediate. And as a result, they're either having to do the work multiple times, or they're living with mold and they're getting sick. The second problem that we have is that the city and FEMA have both put people up in hotels because their housing was unlivable, and they have started to sort of push people out of hotels. FEMA has been reportedly telling folks that their homes are safe to go to, so there won't be any hotel stay service for them anymore, when in fact their homes are still moldy. And the city actually had a deadline of today to evict people from hotels, and they've extended it for a month, but they haven't put in place the long-term housing vouchers that will keep people out of homelessness. So there are some serious gaps in the services that are being provided. The one other issue is that we're quite certain that the city has vastly undercounted the number of people who are in need of assistance, because people who are undocumented, or even who didn't have leases because they might have been living in informal units, weren't able to get assistance. So there are some very big holes.
A lot of big holes, if what you're saying is completely accurate. There's a huge hole in numerous areas. Now, the Sandy relief bill was famously held up in Capitol Hill, but now that it's passed, harsh critics like New Jersey Governor Chris Christie have toned down their rhetoric. Here's Governor Christie talking about the president and Superstorm Sandy relief recently.
Listen, the president has kept every promise that he made. And the fact is that that's what I was saying at the time. What I was saying at the time was, I was asked about how was the president doing, and I said he's doing a good job. He's kept his word. And so everybody knows that I have about 95% level of disagreement with Barack Obama on issues of principle and philosophy. But the fact is, we have a job to do. And what people expect from people they elect is to do their job. And since that time, I have to say, everything that they promised they would do, they've done.
Now, Amaya, he's saying one thing, obviously you're saying another. He went on to say that it takes a long time for this kind of reformation, rebuilding to happen, but at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, 39,000 people in New Jersey alone are still homeless. So what do you think of his comments?
I actually don't in this particular case, disagree with Governor Christie, or I don't think that the issue here is with the federal government. The federal government, I mean, there was a huge issue with the sequester and with the delay of the funding, but the funding that's coming through federal sources to the city and state actually has come relatively quickly, and it comes with some really important transparency and accountability requirements. For example, the federal funding that's coming through the Department of Housing and Urban Development takes a lot of lessons from Hurricane Katrina and requires that half of the money be spent for low-income people, and that all of the money be allocated in a way that accounts for whether plans are going to displace people from housing, particularly low-income people and people of color and immigrants, or whether it's going to support their return. The question is just, will the city and the state actually adhere to those requirements and make those plans? And in the city, you know, we have a mayor whose real focus has been on sort of big ideas competitions and public-private partnerships that end up putting resources more in private hands than in public. We have in the process of trying to develop the Sandy recovery plan some real accountability issues.
Still a long and stubbornly slow process for those families that are looking for relief. Amaya Gelman, policy coordinator at the Alliance for a Just Rebuilding.